Hey, I'm Samir Sitharam, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Microsoft. I focus on Office 365 networking and strategies for complex organizations. On today's show, I'm going to give you an overview of the new Multi-Geo feature in Office 365. As governments, third-party regulators, and corporate compliance teams enact data residency guidelines to address privacy issues, enterprises face technical challenges to maintaining compliance. Research from Emory University shows that there's an increasing trend towards data localization, which is essentially measures that restrict the free flow of data across borders and require that organizations' data be stored within defined boundaries. For example, the Australian government restricts health data from leaving its country. India and Malaysia prohibit the transfer of sensitive personal data or information abroad without permission or unless it's deemed absolutely necessary. The European Union requires adequate protection for data transfers, and Canada requires that personal information held by public bodies has to be stored and accessed only in Canada, of course with some exceptions. But since there's no United Nations of data, organizations who manage data in multiple geographical regions must navigate the labyrinth of local laws that govern data, including more than 100 new data security and privacy laws passed worldwide since 2016. Before we dive into the specifics of how Multi-Geo works, let's get a broad understanding of data residency in Office 365, starting with a look at the tenets that set the tone for Microsoft's giant cloud infrastructure. Microsoft owns and operates one of the top 3 networks in the world, supported by over 100 data centers with over 2 million miles of fiber and a 72 terabit network backbone, all built from the ground up with security in mind. This really shows in no standing access to customer data and a financially backed uptime guarantee. Microsoft also has one of the widest portfolios of compliance accreditations of any cloud service provider. So whether it's ISO, FISMA, EU model clauses, HIPAA, etc., you're completely covered. Microsoft has also released compliance tools and a framework to help customers address their GDPR requirements. And then security is never an afterthought. Microsoft uses several industry-leading measures at the physical and logical layer to ensure that the safety and security of the Office 365 experience. There are also robust controls available to customers to manage their Office 365 data and how users access it. All of this makes Office 365 a secure, enterprise-ready, global cloud productivity service that can help organizations live up to their local, regional, or industry-level data residency needs. As a part of this global service, we operate and offer data residency in 15 worldwide geos. These are split between regional geos such as Asia Pacific, European Union, and the United States. And then there are a number of country-specific geos like Australia, India, Canada, Korea, and so forth. Each geo has a minimum of 2 data center locations and offers in-geo data residency, business continuity, and disaster recovery. Together with a massive networking capacity and global infrastructure, they provide a consistent experience for users independent of the location of where their data is stored at rest. Additionally, we have 3 sovereign geos in the US Gov, China, and Germany. These uniquely address the very specific market by adding additional measures or controls for each one of those respective environments. And here's a visual of the Microsoft Global Network. The dots represent peering locations where internet traffic is exchanged in the Microsoft Global Network. The network itself has very high bandwidth, low latency, and failover capable links. The network is so huge that Microsoft's fiber optic can stretch to the moon and back 3 times over. And our infrastructure investments continue to grow as we plan for more users consuming Microsoft 365 applications. Here's an example of the new Maria transatlantic subsea cable between Virginia and the United States and Bilbao in Spain. Microsoft doesn't really need this cable today, but this is planning for additional bandwidth and headroom for the future. The state-of-the-art cable can send over 160 terabits of data from the United States to Europe. So as a SaaS service, we assign you automatically to a geo based on the country you provide when provisioning a new Office 365 tenant. For example, if you're in the Netherlands, you'll be assigned to the European Union geo. This means that you're going to get data residency for core customer data with data redundancy across at least 2 data center locations, also supporting in-geo business continuity and disaster recovery scenarios. All Office 365 services are going to be available. All users get the same Office 365 experience regardless of where their data is stored at rest or regardless of where they access the service from. And then finally, from a security, privacy, and compliance perspective, your data really belongs to you. This means that you have complete control over it. Microsoft Managed Service Level Security technologies and policies are enabled by default, and custom managed controls let you customize your Office 365 environment to fit your security and compliance requirements. So let's double click on what we mean by data residency in Office 365. Office is such a huge collection of services, and there's so many different storage patterns. We'll quickly want to review where your data is stored at rest, what Microsoft's commitments are for data residency, and how you can verify where your data is located. This background on data residency gives us context and sort of sets the stage for how data control works with the Multi-Geo feature. This slide details where your Office 365 customer data is stored at rest for the various services in Microsoft 365 per our commitments in the Microsoft Online Services terms. Our contractual commitment to store customer data at rest within your Geo is documented in the Microsoft Online Services term. Check out the link aka.ms/MicrosoftOST. As a part of this commitment, we state that for Office 365, Exchange Online mailbox content, SharePoint Online site content, and files stored within that site, OneDrive for Business and Project Online will remain stored at rest within the Geo you've provisioned your tenant in. This is also true even in cases of failover or disaster recovery. That's why we at least have 2 data center locations per Geo. Some services like Exchange Online Protection, Delve, are listed in the same bucket as the contractual commitment. This is because these services leverage one of the contractually committed data stores today. Besides this, the Online Services terms also defines commitments for other services, for example, Power BI, Power Apps, Flow, Intune, or Cloud App Security. For services not listed in the Online Services terms, we still provide you insight into the location of their data at rest as a part of our transparency commitments. You'll notice that some of these services are in your Geo, some in your regional hub, or some simply in the United States. But really, don't take our word for it. You can really verify where your data is stored. There are a couple simple ways of verifying in the Office 365 Admin Center on data maps as to where each Office 365 service stores its data at rest. And if you're a PowerShell kind of person, then just simply check out the Mailbox Region attribute to see where your Exchange Online database is located. The first 3 regions of the database name, NAM, your, or APC, will indicate the Geo in which your Exchange Online mailbox content is stored at rest. We realize that there's a lot more work to do to simplify this for our customers, but that's just the nature of a cloud service. We're continually adding value to the service, and a lot of these services are first launched in the United States. Our North Star is to provide global data residency and commit to it contractually. We start in the United States, then move on to regional hubs, and then finally to every available Geo. The contractual commitment right at the top is really the hardest step. This is a balance between the flexibility needed to innovate and evolve versus the rigidity that a contractual commitment puts through. All right, now we're going to switch over to the star of the show, really multi-geo capabilities in Office 365. We're going to take a look at the value prop, the tech, and the business model for multi-geo. The question we're going to look to answer is how do multinational organizations with offices all around the world address their global data residency needs while digitally transforming their organization with the cloud? So currently there are a few options for multinationals to address their data residency goals. The first one is multiple on-premises deployments. This approach ensures that your data stays in the appropriate Geo. The drawback is that organizations don't benefit from the flexibility and productivity gains that a modern mobile-first, cloud-first technology offers. The second one is to maintain a hybrid architecture where some users get the benefit of cloud-based apps, but a mixed environment ends up creating multiple administrative islands. And because your users across the organization are on different platforms, IT really has to jump through multiple hoops to facilitate collaboration. And also, users on premises don't actually benefit from the work anywhere, anytime, from any device convenience or continually updated services. The third option is to do multiple tenants, create multiple Office 365 tenants. For multinational organizations, this means setting up and maintaining separate islands. Users only gain cloud benefits and collaboration benefits for the geographical region they're in. They don't really collaborate with other users across other tenants. In short, IT's current options are either to create multiple tenants in different Office 365 regions or maintain on-premises mailboxes in some geos to comply with their regulations. These choices create a lot of challenges. You are one company, but because of regulations, you have to manage people and resources who reside in different countries or regions as though they work for completely different companies. This essentially punishes your users and your IT teams who can't take full advantage and promise of the cloud like Office 365. So the answer here is multi-geo. That's the new choice. But now you have another choice to address your global data residency needs provide your users with seamless collaboration, and remove the IT stress from managing multiple environments. Multi-Geo capabilities in Office 365 enables a single Office 365 tenant to span across multiple geographies and gives you the ability to store each user's Office 365 data at rest in a specific geo and address your local, regional, or corporate data residency requirements. Remember, this is just one Office 365 tenant for the entire organization. You're not cobbling up with hybrid or creating multiple Office 365 tenants. We've released Multi-Geo and are in phase 1. Multi-Geo is available for user-attached resources, so you can control where each user's Exchange Online mailbox content and their OneDrive for files are stored at rest. This is available now. In phase 2, we're going to be looking at storage at rest for resources that may have multiple owners, like a SharePoint Online site or an Office 365 group. We'll share details on the availability for shared resources in the near future. So let's get a visual rendition on how Multi-Geo works. Here we've got Contoso on Microsoft.com, a single Office 365 tenant with 25,000 users. They've established their central geo as the United States and have satellite geos in Europe and Australia. The central geo becomes the United States because this is where they instantiated their Office 365 tenant. You can add multiple satellite geos. Contoso has chosen to add 2, but if you look at the bottom of the slide over there are multiple available geos, like country-specific geos or global geos, that Contoso can add to extend their Office 365 tenant. Once their tenant is extended and enabled for Multi-Geo, Contoso can move mailboxes and OneDrive files from on-premises to those respective geos. Contoso can also move users from one geo to another. So let's just imagine that a user from the United States decides to move to Europe. Contoso can move their mailbox and OneDrive for business files from the United States to the European Union geo. Which really drives the 3 value props for Multi-Geo. The fact that organizations get granular data storage controls, you control where each user's Office 365 data for Exchange Online and OneDrive for Business is stored at rest. The second feature is collaboration across your global organization. The fact that all of your users are now a part of the single Office 365 tenant means that your collaboration experience becomes very native in Office 365. You start using features like, the global address list to look up all users across the organization. Your global people picker makes it really easy for you to share documents across the organization. And you start benefiting from the intelligence of new applications like Delve, which really give me the intelligence across my entire global organization, across my users, across files, across content that's being generated. And the final pillar we have is simplified IT management. The fact that IT is going to manage a single Office 365 tenant for the entire organization means that less resources are getting used for enabling user collaboration, for managing data residency, and so on and so forth. So these are our 3 main pillars for Multi-Geo capabilities in Office 365. And again, the idea is to move data from on-premises to the cloud, or move data between geos from the United States to Europe, Europe to Australia, and so on and so forth, and you have that complete flexibility to do so. There are a few things that Multi-Geo does not guarantee. The first one is pinning your data to a specific data center. We pin your data to a specific geo, so when you decide to put your data in the United States, that data is spread across multiple data centers within the United States geo. It's not pinned to a particular data center facility in that geo. Data will not follow a user who travels. So imagine a user leaves the United States and is traveling to Europe on a business visit. That data is not going to follow that user to Europe. The user will still connect into the nearest entry point of the Microsoft Global Network, but the data will continue to remain in the United States. Multi-Geo is not required for GDPR compliance. GDPR does not mandate any sort of data residency requirements. However, we see a lot of global organizations adopt Multi-Geo to fulfill their contractual commitment with their regulators or any such internal compliance requirements. And then finally, Multi-Geo is not a panacea for improving performance in Office 365. There's a couple of things I'd like to double click on that. Microsoft Global Network is one of the largest networks in the world. We've got over 2,700 ISPs that peer with us in over 150 peering locations. Our service front door infrastructure, this is where the Office 365 experience really gets rendered, is in over 100 different locations worldwide. And then we've got over 35 data centers all across the world. The Microsoft Global Network itself is coming closer to users. So what we recommend customers do is optimize for connectivity into the nearest entry point of the Microsoft Global Network, and don't really adopt Multi-Geo with a performance lens in mind. There are a whole bunch of other things that you can do to enhance performance in Office 365. Multi-Geo is not necessarily a panacea for your performance woes. So in Ignite 2017, we launched the Office 365 Connectivity Principles, which is just a general framework for connectivity to SaaS services, specifically Office 365. It starts with differentiating your traffic from generic internet traffic, egressing your network connections locally, along with your matching DNS, optimizing the route length for users, so ensuring that there are no hairpins or backhauling of traffic happening, and then finally ensuring that you're not breaking and inspecting Office 365 traffic on the wire because that adds additional latency. Go check out these principles at aka.ms/Office 365 networking. The bottom line over here is that you should really optimize connectivity to the nearest entry point in the Microsoft Global Network and not worry about where your data is stored at rest. Multi-Geo is not a panacea for improving network connectivity to Office 365. This general framework should address your networking requirements. Let's switch gears again now, and we'll talk about Multi-Geo administration. Multi-Geo is super easy to administer. It's not something that you do on a daily basis. There are a couple things that administrators should do to plan for Multi-Geo, but again, from an administrative standpoint, it's not something that you're going to touch on a daily basis. The first step is to enable your tenant with Multi-Geo capabilities. You'll simply talk to your Microsoft account representative, and we'll get your tenant enabled for Multi-Geo on the back end. Once you do that, you're going to choose and add satellite geos to your tenant. So you'll decide how much you want to extend your tenant to, whether you want to add a few geolocations or several geolocations. That's completely your prerogative. And then you'll assign users with satellite geos. We've got a new attribute that we've created in Azure Active Directory called Preferred Data Location, PDL. It's a user-level property that'll allow you to specify the location of your user's mailbox and OneDrive for Business files. So you'll go ahead and stamp this preferred data location attribute on each one of your users. If you're going to use Azure Active Directory, if you've got Active Directory on-premises and you want to use Azure Active Directory, you can extend your schema on-premises, add this PDL attribute to your users, and then use AAD to go ahead and sync that up to the cloud. And then if you're simply on the cloud completely and not using any sort of on-premises AD, then you can use PowerShell to establish a PDL for each of these users. Once you've established a PDL on a user, the mailbox and the OneDrive for Business files will move to the corresponding geo. And then you can go ahead and report each user's data location and go ahead and address your global data residency needs. We'll talk about Exchange Online here real quick. Exchange is essentially building on its existing capabilities. The service for Exchange Online is accessible globally. It's a single namespace. So Outlook.office.com is all you need to access your Outlook mailbox, your Exchange Online mailbox. And then from an Outlook perspective, your Outlook uses auto discovery to discover the mailbox location. So once a mailbox has been moved, say for instance, from Europe to the United States, there isn't really much for the end user to do or for the admin to do. Outlook is smart enough to connect automatically to the new mailbox location, which would be here in the United States. And then from a configuration perspective, all your recipient information and configuration is automatically stored in the Exchange Online directory. So nothing really changes on that front. To set up the preferred data location, you can use PowerShell or you can use your on-premises directory to simply use Azure Active Directory and sync that up to the cloud. You'll simply set msol user and then you'll assign the user with a PDL. And once you've done that PDL, you will notice that the PDL gets registered, and then if I do a format list, it shows that the PDL for this user is registered as Canada. Once the PDL is established on the user, once the user is stamped with a particular PDL and that's synced up to Azure, your Exchange Online mailboxes will automatically move to the corresponding geo. So if I set this user's PDL as Canada, all the mailboxes belonging to this user will move from whatever its location is right now. So say, for instance, it's already in the cloud in the United States, it'll simply move to Canada. So that's pretty much all you would need to do from an Exchange Online perspective to move mailboxes between geos. Let's take a look at a few scenarios around Exchange Online. Multi-Geo is not an end-user facing feature. It's a data residency feature. So really, end users shouldn't really care about where their mailbox is located at rest, and they wouldn't really even look and see where their mailbox is located. They just experience Multi-Geo because of the collaboration features that they get by collaborating with other users and other geos. But again, from an end user perspective, end users really can't see this feature. From an admin scenario, new mailboxes can be provisioned to a specified geo. So you can go ahead, if you're getting a new employee joining the organization and you want a mailbox to be provisioned in Europe, which is outside your geo, for example, you can go and do that with Multi-Geo. Your existing mailboxes, like we saw earlier, can be moved from one geo to another geo. So you can move mailboxes from the United States to Canada, from Europe to Australia. Again, mix and match based on your business requirements. And then existing Exchange Online on-premises mailboxes, as we mentioned earlier, can also be onboarded onto a specified geo. So for instance, if I had users on premises in Australia, I can simply pull their mailboxes and put them in the cloud in Office 365 in the Australian geo, again, as a part of my single Office 365 tenant experience. On the right side over here, you can see the collaboration experience, a free busy lookup between users that are in completely different geos. And again, this wasn't possible without doing hybrid, without doing extra work and extra piping for this. But now with Multi-Geo, it's completely available out of the box. Let's look at how OneDrive does setting the PDL and essentially enabling multi-geos. So if you go to the OneDrive Admin Center on a multi-geo enabled tenant, you'll notice on the bottom left, we've got geolocations. There's a new tab for that. So go ahead and click on geolocations, and what you'll notice is that the geolocation shows with all the geos that have been added to your Office 365 tenant. So in this case, I've got a geo in North America. That's my central geo. And then I've got a geo in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So that's my satellite geo. If you look at the top right-hand side of the screen, it's showing you the geolocation in North America. And again, I can go and establish different sharing policies, syncing policies for each one of my geos. Now let's go and add an additional geo. So say, for instance, I wanted to go and extend my geos. I can simply go and add a satellite geo. Here, I'm going to add Asia Pacific. So I'm going to add Asia Pacific. I'm going to provide it a particular namespace. Now, here's the difference between Exchange and OneDrive. With Exchange, it's a global namespace, so you don't really have to add additional geos. You can simply specify a preferred data location on a user, and we're going to move their mailbox to that particular geo. With OneDrive, you need to establish a namespace for each particular geo separately. So in this case, I'm going to pick something that's easily identifiable. I'm going to say Contoso APC, because it's Asia Pacific. I'm going to say contosopc.sharepoint.com. So now I'm going to add it. It's going to start prepping it up. Our backend engines are flaring up to set up your new geo. And then voila, your new geo gets added to your Office 365 tenant. Now that you've got your geo set up, you can simply move a user's file from their existing geo to a new geo. With Exchange, all you had to do was set the PDL, and that simply moves the mailboxes in the backend. With OneDrive, there's an additional PowerShell commandlet that you're going to have to issue in order to move a user's file from one geo to another geo. So you'll simply do the start SPA user and content move, specify the geo to which you want the content moved to, and the user for whom that content is getting moved, and that's all. The service on our backend, on Microsoft's backbone, will go ahead and move the files from one geo to another. OneDrive also has Geobased settings. So from an administrative perspective, you can go ahead and establish sharing policies based on each geo. So I could say that, hey, my users in North America are permitted to share externally, whereas my users in Europe and Australia are not allowed to share externally. So you can make those sharing settings for each geo separately from the OneDrive Admin Center. From an end user perspective, there's a whole bunch of collaborative features that you get with Multi-Geo, the simplest of which is the global people picker. The fact that you can look up any user in the organization and it becomes really easy for you to share documents, send emails, and so forth with that user because you have one global address list and one global people picker across the entire organization that's all managed in the cloud. Your Shared With Me in OneDrive now shows files from all the geos. It's not just from your own geo, but you could get a file from a user in Australia, users in Europe. It's really bringing your organization together and working as a network. All your clients, whether it's your Office client, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth, your next-gen sync clients, your OneDrive for Business client on your devices are all multi-geo ready. There is no additional configuration required for you to get them multi-geo ready. The moment a user pops in their email address, we will know what geo that user is in, and their OneDrive for Business, Exchange Online experience is optimized exactly for that. So there's no additional work that admins need to do or users need to do in order to set up their clients and set up their devices for viewing their OneDrive for Business files. Delve, another brand new feature that users get in a multi-geo scenario, right? The fact that all your users are a part of the same Office 365 tenant means that you can look up users' profiles across other geos, share content easily, and really tap into the intelligence of the organization. From an auditing perspective, for security and compliance, all the audit logs from all the geos are in one single location. So simply log on to the Security and Compliance Center in your Office 365 admin, and then look for logs across all the geos, and they'll all be centralized in the audit logging screen there. So you can search one spot for all the logs. From a reporting perspective, if you want to prove to your compliance officers or to the organization as to where each user's data is stored at rest, simply leverage multi-geo reporting. If you go to the user cards over there, you'll notice the preferred data location. We've added that moniker over there, so it'll tell you where that user's data at rest will be stored. And then you can also get a user count by geo. So on the right side, you can see in the reporting section, the Office 365 admin, you can see usage reports in terms of the number of users in each geo. Over here, I've got a small number of users in APAC and a large set of users in North America. And this is updated on a monthly basis so that you can get a count of, it's all based on PDL, so you get a count of how many users are in each particular geo. Multi-Geo is a premium Office 365 offering. As of now, it's available as an add-on SKU for Office 365 tenants with a minimum of 5,000 users. And it's all bundled up. Our promise is continuing to evolve for Multi-Geo. So today you have Exchange and OneDrive available. In the near future, you're going to get SharePoint Online and Office 365 groups. We're also in talks with other Office 365 services to get those applications Multi-Geo enabled. So the suite itself is continuing to broaden, and it's all bundled together at the price point that we're going to offer it at. The purchasing process is not web direct, so you can't really add Multi-Geo to cart today. It's through your Microsoft account team. So reach out to your Microsoft account representative if you're interested in Multi-Geo, and they'll know exactly what to do to get your ordering started. The pricing is $2 per user per month, only for users in satellite geos. So if you go back a few slides, you're only going to license users in Europe and Australia. You're not going to license users in your central geo. You're only going to license users in your satellite geo, which in most cases will be a smaller number than the number of users in your central geo. And then finally, it's available as an add-on to a number of SKUs over here listed on the right. So your specific M365, Office 365 SKUs, Exchange Online Plan 1, OneDrive for Business Plan 1, and SharePoint for Business, SharePoint Online Plan 1 and Plan 2 SKUs are available for Multi-Geo. And then finally, we've been in preview over the last year, and then we've gone generally available in April. And we already have some really awesome customers using Multi-Geo and Office 365 to meet their global data residency needs, to meet their compliance goals, and also to provide their global users an awesome productivity experience in Office 365. So really want to thank Korn Ferry, Dimension Data, and Cody for giving us awesome customer stories around how they use Multi-Geo in their organization's digital transformation. Finally, we've got a couple of resources for you to go check out on Multi-Geo. Check out Multi-Geo Home at aka.ms/multi-geo, and check out this tech community blog at aka.ms/getMultiGeo. We'd love your feedback in the tech community blog, what's working, what's not working. Love to hear your feedback so that we can pass it on to the product group directly. All right, with that was our presentation today. Thanks for taking the time. Cheers.